Hello YouTube, it's Hauntown here, and today we're gonna be looking at 9 upcoming survival horror games inspired by 2 legends in the genre. Resident Evil and Silent Hill are arguably the 2 most well-known video game series in the survival horror arena, with Resident Evil having practically invented the genre by necessitating ammo and medical item conservation to survive against hordes of zombies and bioexperiments, and Silent Hill taking the genre down a more psychological path by introducing weirdly surreal settings and narratives while still maintaining a bunch of horrific creatures for you to go up against. Now, as you would expect, since their initial release back in the 90s, there have been a ton of games trying to imitate them and capture just a glimmer of what made those initial titles memorable, with varying degrees of success. What's fascinating, however, is that over the past few years there has been a resurgence of interest in the survival horror genre. And when I say resurgence, I mean in the exact type of gameplay and visual style first introduced by those games, such as tank controls, fixed camera angles, and graphics reminiscent of the glorious days of the PS1 era. I can't even begin to describe how excited I am that the genre is returning back to its roots. And to celebrate that, I'll be presenting to you 9 survival horror games I played during the Steam Next Fest of 2024 that wear their Resident Evil and Silent Hill inspirations on their sleeve like a badge of honor. During my tumultuous time on this world of ours, I've had the opportunity to play many games that reminded me of Silent Hill, but few of them nailed the ambience the series went for, like BECROWNED. Here you get to play as a guy named Richard, who ends up getting lost inside an insane asylum, which, admittedly, looks exactly like what the darker part of my mind believes asylums to actually be like: blood and rust and monsters and all. Straight from the start, the game makes clear its psychological horror approach, with horrific apparitions and visions instantly plaguing dear old Richard and making him question what's real and what's not. I have to say I loved the ambience of constant dread that permeated my exploration of the dilapidated asylum, as well as the feeling of perpetual vulnerability I had, since weapon and health resources are few and combat is as classically clunky as it gets, with Richard attacking like a guy that has never held a knife in his life and also face tanking every hit that comes his way, since I didn't figure out a way to defend myself other than running away, though that could be my bad. But if there's one thing I loved more than the aforementioned classic ambience, it was the puzzles. God, how I'd missed the puzzles. You do get the classic situations of picking up an item from one place and having to find where to utilize it, like getting a sharp scalpel and remembering there was a corpse with a stitched stomach you can use it on, but you also find those magnificent brain teasers that will need a bit more thinking juice from you, like this awesome book conundrum, which I'm proud to say I figured out on my own after several minutes of shooting in the dark, by realizing that I had to stack the books in chronological order, which made me feel like a true Sherlock Holmes. Kudos go to the monster designs as well, since for the life of me, I couldn't tell what these things actually are, which is the exact level of understanding a Silent Hill-inspired enemy must evoke. Are they deformed humans? Are they living dolls, statues, necromorphs? By the way, is it me or are these things moving way too sensually? I'm not sure if they're coming to attack me or love me long time. Anyway, one thing that really tested my patience here was the at times maddeningly bad fixed camera approach, which had me going back and forth between 2 screens due to its weird positioning and sensitivity. Come on! Come on! Damn it, just go to the door, dude, God! I mean, don't get me wrong, I love this, but damn it, I hate you so much! I also enjoyed the thoroughly creepy radio mechanic, which has you tune into different frequencies when it comes to certain points where something bad has happened, and allows you to listen to the event like a radio station coming from the great beyond. All in all, if you love Silent Hill, keep BECROWNED on your radar. Did you ever wonder what would happen if you combined Dark Souls and Resident Evil? Well, someone did, and then they made Cult of Blood. The game puts you into the role of a police officer that's essentially a less buffed Chris Redfield, whose night is about to take a turn for the worse after a stranger requests help from his police station, which, to be honest, simply looks like a shack in the woods to me, but I ain't complaining because what follows is just pure bloodshed. The stranger says he has been attacked by vampires, and you're tasked with checking out his claims by your grumpy police chief who doesn't believe him. Well, turns out the stranger wasn't lying, because the first thing you find in the woods is a man being burned alive before a crapload of bloodthirsty tribal weirdos descend upon you. I just loved everything about Cult of Blood. First and foremost, the visuals are ridiculously crisp and detailed, which truly brings out the eeriness of the woodland setting, with towering gangly trees and darkly rustic wooden constructions telling a story of their own. Second, combat is weighty and brutal and really makes you feel like you're all beating the crap out of each other as blood spurts fly around chaotically, with the occasional execution sending heads fly off as well. The game features both ranged as well as melee combat, though I had so much fun hacking and slashing at my enemies with my axe that I stuck with it for the majority of the demo. The tank controls might take a moment to get used to, but I'd be damned if they didn't take me back to the 90s and the first time I played Resident Evil 2. The Dark Souls part comes into play during combat, which requires dodging and counter-attacking to make sure you survive, especially during boss fights, as well as the healing flask you get, which, let's face it, is the Estus flask of the modern man, since the developer has said it will be replenishing at certain magic shrines you'll be coming across, just like using a bonfire. There's even an unlockable card system that allows you to have new weapons, game modes, and outfits during subsequent playthroughs, which was great. Cult of Blood kept me hooked with its awesome gameplay, intriguing lore building, beautifully creepy setting, and waves of nostalgia it overwhelmed me with, which makes it a day one purchase for me. Go check it out right now! If BECROWNED was the most Silent Hill game I've played recently, then Echoes of the Living is as Resident Evil as an experience can get. The narrative transpires during October of 1996, the spookiest month of the year, and places you into the dual role of Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield, Liam Oakwood and Laurel Reeves, as they try to survive a zombie outbreak in Alba City. From its tank controls to environmental puzzles all the way to the user interface design of its menu, save rooms, and cheesy voice acting, Echoes of the Living simply oozes 90s classics nostalgia in the best ways possible. The game's visuals are beautiful and set an amazingly immersive ambience for the whole thing, though dear lord man, would it kill you to crank up the brightness a bit? Anyway, combat was awesome as well, especially melee, which had you hacking off zombie heads like they were nothing. I also loved the puzzles the game incorporates, which require logical thinking and observation to solve. On a side note, props to Liam's girlfriend, Olivia Blade, for having the most badass last name ever. Unfortunately, I did run into some technical issues with the demo, so I didn't get a chance to finish it, but the 30 minutes I got with the game felt like I was back in 1998 at a friend's living room as we plopped the Leon Kennedy disc into his PS1, not knowing the epic horror adventure we were about to embark upon. If Resident Evil is your jam, make sure to have a look at Echoes of the Living. It's a true nostalgia trip. Man, being a teenager can suck, but being a teenager who's lost her sister and must explore a demented carnival to find her must suck even more. That's the story of Carnival Massacre, a game that puts you in the shoes of Harley, a girl that looks suspiciously like a young Marilyn Manson, who steals her parents' car to go to Pebbles Wonderland, an abandoned carnival, in search of her missing sibling. I'm sure nothing will go wrong there, right?
Little girl?
Oh, okay. Carnival Massacre draws heavy inspiration from the Resident Evil series, tank controls, save rooms, brain-teasing puzzles, giant spider and all. I also loved its haunting music and thought its graphics and color palette were amazing. The main problem here was that the demo was a buggy mess, mainly when trying to descend from elevated terrain, which pretty much kept you walking on air like a frigging magician until you stopped moving, which brought you back to the ground. There was also this hilarious instance right here. Ha 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 ha, you can't get me. Oh shit, no, run, run, shoot her! Bugs aside, I loved the game's atmosphere, direction, and story, since it seems like it intends to infuse some psychological horror into the overall mix by having you question Harley's sanity. Movement can be quite finicky, as mostly expected from tank controls, but for the most part, I figured it out. Though it would be great to optimize it so I don't have to hold my breath every time I pass by a trap and pray I don't accidentally tilt the analog stick the wrong way and step on it. Overall, do keep an eye on Carnival Massacre. It may turn out to become a small gem in the genre. Returning to your hometown can be either a great experience if you had fun there, or the opposite if it was bad. However, chances are Helena, the protagonist of Delic, has it worse since she returns to her childhood home only to find everyone having turned to psychopathic monsters as a result of a strange fog that permeates the place. What's interesting about Delic is that it transpires in Brazil and makes an effort to provide a realistic geographical and historical basis for the terrors that are transpiring there. The other interesting thing is that the game seems to be incorporating an alien visitation and abduction abduction aspect into its storyline, which I found very intriguing since this is very rare as a narrative thread in survival horror games. Delic draws immense inspiration from the Resident Evil series, mainly the 4th and 5th games due to its infected citizens not really being zombies but much faster and stronger entities. You even have this liquor-inspired abomination that gave me a run for my money. It also features a behind-the-shoulder camera angle instead of the fixed perspective one. My main issue with this game is that the enemies are the epitome of a bullet sponge. I mean, for the love of God, man, die, just die already, please, I'm running out of bullets! The ambience was alright, though there was lots of empty space to explore without reason. Delic is interesting and I'll keep an eye out on it, but it's definitely the second weakest entry in this list, though it does have potential. Remember when I said that BECROWNED was the most Silent Hill experience I've had recently? Well, I'd like to replace that with Fragile Reflection, a game that momentarily had me thinking I had traveled back in time and was playing the first Silent Hill all over again. I mean, look at this thing, look at it! Set in Japan in the late 90s, Fragile Reflection has you revisiting your childhood home as Kario Ito, a young woman who is about to regret coming back here since her hometown is a tad bit different than how she remembers it, what with the fog and the indescribable monsters and the giant red cosmic cubes consuming everything. The game had two different stages available for me to play, one being a creepy, unsettlingly wonderful experience as I visited my hometown amidst the intense fog, which focused more on exploration and puzzle solving, and another that was longer and more combat-oriented, transpiring in a labyrinthine mine complex full of horrific monstrosities, including this ungodly creature which also functioned as the last boss of the stage. One element of Fragile Reflection that will probably play a big role in the full game is your ability to switch between the real world and the hellish realm at will after you find a certain item, which is necessary to move through the aforementioned red cubes as well as see things invisible to the naked eye. I will say that the visual filter of the hellish realm can be a bit tiring on the eyes at times, so maybe some work could be done to make it less intense. On a last note, super special shout out to the game's soundtrack, which is as Akira Yamao-esque as can be. I mean, listen to this thing. If Silent Hill is right up your alley, then you owe it to yourself to give Fragile Reflection a shot. So I guess that technically this next one is mostly influenced by the Alone in the Dark games, more specifically the first one, though it does also show some Resident Evil influences. Old God, the Legacy of Cthulhu gives you the option to play as one of two characters, namely Vincent, a collector looking for his missing girlfriend, and Afra, a woman who seems very much overdressed for whatever the hell is happening in the story. So the thing is, this game's translation is quite bad and at times makes little sense, but my understanding is that this mysterious island was discovered in the South Pacific Ocean, which is somehow connected to the Great Old Ones, and the people that tried to take advantage of its power ended up unleashing the wrath of good old Cthulhu himself. That's pretty much the gist of it. Vincent's gameplay was fairly straightforward, with you moving around a few admittedly well-designed and atmospheric rooms that I would assume belong to a huge manor, during which time you fought and looted creatures that looked like necromorphs as you tried to escape. This is probably a good point to mention that both Vincent and Afra are allergic to running, so I had to walk the whole time I played the demo. Afra's gameplay seemed to introduce a whole lot of different gameplay mechanics that did seem interesting, such as the ability to close off interdimensional rifts, save people from being trapped into a cosmic hell, and also some sort of tentacles that allowed you to pay them in exchange for a random piece of loot. But I didn't manage to get too far with her since the game's inventory is horribly designed and, aside from making it hard to find the item you need in it, also kept randomly swallowing certain items I needed, such as a key I had to use on a door. I should also mention that the Legacy of Cthulhu seems to be incorporating some kind of insanity mechanic, which is common in Lovecraftian games, though exactly how this works and what happens when it drops to zero remains unclear since I was awesome and didn't die once. At first I thought maybe it was my health bar, but I do have a health bar already, so who knows. All in all, loved the visuals and atmosphere, but everything else needs work here, from the translation to the bug inventory all the way to letting characters run, for crying out loud. This is the weakest entry on this list, but I do see this making a turn toward the positive if the developers listen to community feedback. If you like Lovecraftian games, you can keep this one at the back of your mind, though it needs much polish for me to recommend it. Do you know what you get when you throw Resident Evil and Silent Hill in the cauldron and also add a bit of Fatal Frame for good measure? You get Heartworm. The story has you play as Sam, a young grief-stricken woman who decides to go find a creepy house she heard about on the internet, which supposedly allows you to come in contact with the dead. Her search leads her to an isolated little town near the mountains, and that's when things get messy as she starts coming across increasingly surreal and terrifying places and entities. Heartworm's creepy setting feels part Silent Hill, part Resident Evil as a combination of creepiness and intensity, and even goes so far as to incorporate the door transitions of the early Resident Evil games, which nearly brought a tear to my eye. You'll also get your classic environmental puzzles which require logical thinking to solve, as well as the standard process of figuring out which key goes to which lock and which item should be used on which part of the setting. Fatal Frame's influence shows during combat, since Sam's way of fighting back comes in the form of an old camera which she uses to stagger or kill enemies, with said camera also capable of being upgraded with certain add-ons you find, making it more powerful. The one boss I got to face, namely a giant spider, was quite fun, which bodes well for the rest of the abominations the game will definitely be throwing at you. If this demo is any indication of the game's final quality, Heartworm will probably end up being an awesome experience, so make sure to give it a shot once it comes out if you are nostalgic about the era of classic survival horror games, or if you are new and wish to see what the fuss is all about while getting some nice quality of life features that will make this appeal to a younger audience. I wanted to keep the best for last here so that we can go out with a banger, and boy oh boy what a banger this one was. I'm talking about Connection: The Nightmare Within, a game fully influenced by the Resident Evil series with a touch of the evil within. Step into the boots of Michael Stone, a private investigator that looks like David Duchovny in perpetual Chad face. Stone first joined the police force to catch his mother's killer, but eventually quit after being overwhelmed by the brutality of the crimes he had to solve, though he never failed to solve them. However, there is no rest for the wicked, as he is now forced into the worst case of his life after a series of mind attacks on unsuspecting citizens lead him to learning about the existence of mind space terrorism, a form of mental attack that makes humans believe they're being hunted by monsters, with the experience being so intense that any injuries they receive during the ordeals are actually reflected on their bodies. Stone is recruited by a special FBI unit in order to infiltrate the mind of the person responsible for the technology that made mind space attacks possible in the first place, and that's when things go haywire. I cannot describe how much I loved my playthrough of this demo. First and foremost, it is incredibly polished and visually stunning, with gameplay that for the most part felt smooth as butter. Second, the very setting itself, being the mind of a psychopath, gives way for so much creativity that I cannot wait to see what sort of horrors I'll get to face in there, aside from the ones I've already witnessed. As expected, you get your fair share of logical puzzles, which were awesome, like this one where you had to match the information received from a poem to the color scheme necessary to open this briefcase. And you have some hectic combat to boot, with shooting as well as melee attacks feeling appropriately hefty. I even got some Resident Evil 3 vibes, since you have this monstrosity coming after you from time to time, which gave me Nemesis shell shock. Special note should also go to the game's direction, which truly made me feel like I was watching a movie during its cutscenes. Do not sleep on Connection: The Nightmare Within. It was the most pleasantly surprising discovery I made during this next fest, and its release is actually right around the corner. I simply cannot wait for it. There you have it, ghouls and gals, 9 survival horror games inspired by the ultimate progenitors of the genre. As someone who constantly reminisces about horror culture during the 90s in the fondest of ways, it is incredibly heartwarming for me to see one of the most important parts of my life making a comeback in the exact form I came to know and love it. And I'm hoping these games will give the older ones among you some well-deserved nostalgia, and the younger ones some knowledge of how the modern games you know and love today actually started. Feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and remember to stay spooky!